It's let's talk about myths, baby. It's not Liv. It's Michaela. Hi. Liv is on vacation, and we have, by we I mean me and her, have decided that she needs to take a vacation that is fully just off from work, which is really hard to do when you have a podcast. It's the amount of times you just need to be on all the time is exhausting, but she really needed the break, so she's off enjoying herself and said you get an introduction by me. So this week we are doing a collaboration with Historical Homos and on Disney Hercules. Isn't that fun? Liv and Bash got together and talked about the show and all its queerness and its delightfulness, and it was so much fun to give this a listen to and get ready for you guys because oh my god, I loved Disney Hercules growing up. It was my favorite and still is my favorite Disney movie. I swear to God, Meg was like my queer awakening. I either wanted to be her or be with her. You know, it was one of those vibes. But anyways, yes, it is so delightfully fun and exciting. So without further ado, here is the collab. Bye.
Welcome back to another episode of Historical Homos, the world's only no fucks given guide to queer history. May I say today that I am so excited for this episode. This has been in the works for months, really, probably my entire life. It is all about Disney's Hercules. Now, this was a movie that didn't turn me gay because I definitely knew I was gay before. I think maybe The Little Mermaid fully turned me gay, just wanting to be part of that world. But my obsession with Greek mythology was an early and recognizable sign that I was indeed very gay. And this Disney's Hercules just put it on steroids, put it on absolute steroids. I went crazy for this film. And one of the reasons that I went crazy for it is that it's actually kind of grown up. The writing is so clever. It's all of the historical references are, mythological references are amazing. It's so carefully done. And even my dad, who was a crotchety old bastard and was a writer himself, so did not hand out praise lightly, said this was the only Disney movie that he could actually sit through. He loved it that much. And if you haven't seen it, it's going to convert you by the end of this episode. First of all, if you don't know the story, we're going to get into it. But this is a classic Disney princess tale of a misunderstood girly who has to go to the big city and discover herself and realize that the only thing that is going to really save her is love in the end. Okay. Now, that could be the plotline of Pocahontas. That could be the plotline of The Little Mermaid. And it is the same plotline for Disney's Hercules. As I said, this is one of the greatest films ever written, hands down. It is also one of the campest Disney films on record. So we're going to go through and we're going to ask, what makes this the greatest film ever written? Number one. And question number two, why is it so goddamn camp? And to do that, we're going to talk about the original myth of Hercules, the actual Greek hero who was, it turns out, pretty bisexual and gay a lot of the time. And then we're going to go through the actual movie and talk about it bit by bit. So get out your strappy, slutty little sandals and get ready to dive into the wildly homosexual waters of Disney's Hercules, where it's actually very, let me just test my toe in there. Oh yeah, delightful human temperature.
Back in time and take another rewrite through our history. Celebrate ourselves tonight and cover all the things that still a mystery. Cause if you think you know, you don't know, around the world we go. Time to blow your mind with historical homos.
And we are back. I am so thrilled to welcome to your tight little ear holes a second-time guest on this podcast, the wonderful, the delightful, the delicious Liv Albert. Liv, how the fuck are you?
I'm so fucking excited. How are you?
I'm good. Like, I have been looking forward to this all day, literally. Like, something that I can really just dish about, you know? Something that I know inside out. Liv, since you joined us last time in June, I've instituted a new law where I start every episode with 3 questions. How are you? Who are you? We already covered that. Who are you, in your own words? And what's inspiring you right now?
How am I is I'm excited about Disney's Hercules and very little else right now because 2025. And the next question, who am I? I am Liv, and there's a lot of things I could say here.
Mic drop.
Yeah. I am the person who may or may not have been yelling in your ears about Greek mythology for the last 8 years for my podcast, Let's Talk About Myths, Baby, which, like you, heavily exists because of Disney's Hercules. And what inspires me, or what is inspiring me? Oh gosh. Are people finding inspiration right now? Is that like a thing that people are finding? Because I would like some.
It's been harder and harder to ask this question, I will say.
It's not the year for it. Everything's on fire, but that's been increasingly true over the last, 5+ years? So who's to say?
Yeah. It's more of an acceleration of the trend.
Yeah. I would say Greek mythology is the thing that inspires me all of the time. Usually it's my righteous fury about not just how women were treated, but how we talk about how they were treated now from a historical perspective. And I think the more I learn, the more fueled I am by righteous feminist rage. And that is inspiring.
That'll keep you going.
Yeah, it really does.
That'll keep you going for years.
Well, 8
diet.
years running. Yeah.
Great diet. Steady diet of rage. Okay, that's inspiring to you. I mean, let's talk about Disney's Hercules for a moment. I want to know, when's the first time you saw it? What do you remember watching it for the first time? I'll answer my own question first. I probably blacked out from excitement watching it the first time. Like, I have no recollection. It only exists in my mind as a movie that I've seen 26 times. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think I must have watched it 4 times within the first week or something like that. And now over to you.
No, I think that's similar to my experience, which is I honestly have almost no like direct memories from childhood, which is maybe a good or a bad thing. Who's to say? I think it's ADHD. I think it's that everything else got shoved out of my head the more I learned about the most absurd intricacies of Greek mythology. I just don't have room for anything else anymore. So I have no memory of like when I first watched it, but I know based on the fact that it came out in 97 and I was born in 88. So I think I'm sure that I just stumbled face first into this story and then never looked back. And I have no memory of it because I was 9, but I know for a fact that like I must have just watched it and then never looked back because it was peak age and it was like peak interests. And so that's all I know. But I also just remember it as like a movie I know way too well.
I'm obsessed with you saying you remember nothing from your childhood because I kind of also have that. Like, I have like vague memories, but like to me, there's like my life before I came out and my life after I came out. I came out when I was 16, and everything pre-coming out is sort of like, I was definitely there, but I couldn't tell you exactly who did what, you know? Whereas like post coming out, I'm like, dun, remember everything. Except for my mid-20s, maybe when I was,
Yeah, there's other reasons, right?
A little too drunk for comfort, but...
No, I think, I mean, I don't have anything like as iconic as that, but I really think it's that I had undiagnosed ADHD and like there was just too much coming in. Everything else got pushed aside. My memory is just this like floating like hippie weirdo kid who probably watched a lot of I mean, I know my mom was keen on a lot of Disney's, so I'm sure that we went straight out and she was like, this one you can learn about history and Greek mythology and be entertained.
It was so exciting to me. The first Greek mythology book I had was D'Aulaire's Book of Greek Myths. I've spent hours and hours going over and over tracing the pictures in that book. And then to have something that kind of presented that in like beautifully animated, perfect form, it just like brain on fire.
I have to say something about Dolores because I was not a Dolores girl, but like I have heard so much from people over the years about like how that book got them into it. But like, have you reread it at all? Like, so I had to buy.
Not in a while.
I say this. I bought a copy because I'm working on this children's Odyssey book. I don't know if I mentioned it last time, but that's literally the only thing I've been doing with my time. And so I bought it because I was like, I just am curious, like how kids have been taught Greek myths. I don't remember how I learned, but it wasn't through this. Can I just say that the first opening is, in olden times, when men still worshipped ugly idols, there lived in the land of Greece a folk of shepherds and herdsmen who cherished light and beauty. They did not worship dark idols like their neighbors, but created instead their own beautiful, radiant gods. And anyway, it just turns out that the opening of that is the most overtly disturbing, like, racism I've read in a long time.
Racist, Western-centric bullshit. Yeah.
Wow. Ugly idols, the Greeks and their beautiful radiant gods. Anyway, sorry, I've not been able to talk about that with anybody because the layers hasn't come up, and so I had to spout it at you. But I think it's a good example too of like the way that, I mean, I think Hercules is a good example of like learning about Greek myth without it being like in contrast to other cultures. Like there's obviously problems with it, but at least it wasn't like, look at these Greeks, they're better than everyone else.
I love that you bring that up also because I found that recently while I read the first Percy Jackson book, because I was like, as an adult, I was like, I've never read this before. I want to see. And Percy Jackson has never, it's like, there's something too mainstream about it. I'm like, this is not hardcore shit. Like, this is not for real Greek mythology fans. And when I read it, I was like, okay, it's actually clever. It's definitely got some good, action beats to it. But there's this big passage in the front that's all about how the gods go wherever Western civilization is strongest. Yeah. And it was like, that's why first they were in France for a while. Well, that's why they were in Greece, and then they went to Rome, and then they were in France for a while, and then they went to England, and then now they're in America, which is obviously the best place on earth that does everything right, and that's why they live here. And it was just like, it was so transparent. I was like, how dare this be peddled to children in this way?
I've also never read Percy Jackson. It came out when I was like late teens, so I just never got into it. But I last week recorded with a friend who we were talking about like reception and all of these problematic things. And she actually read that whole opening section to me, and I'd never heard it before. And I couldn't believe what I was listening to. She was talking to me about it, in relation to this article that a mutual friend, a professor, wrote about. It's called The Whitening Thief, like about those issues, but also that like Rick Riordan generally, it's great. Rick Riordan generally, though, has like addressed a lot of it and like really tried to change it in his later books, which I've heard, which I think he deserves a lot of credit for, particularly in comparison to some other people whose work was deemed problematic after the fact and they just doubled down and became enormous assholes. So, but I have heard how wildly Western civilization that beginning is.
No, that's true. And he came out with all those other series that were around like ancient Egyptian gods and all of that. And,
he seems to have made an effort, just comparatively to other people, at least. I don't know.
We'll give him a pass on that unbelievably Western-centric nonsense. But it is, I mean, it's interesting. It's how Greek mythology, especially when it's transmitted to children, is positioned as important because it is this like, home of Western civilization, when actually like Greek mythology is just fucking freaks everywhere. Like, I mean,
it's freaky, and it's also all for the most part borrowed or inspired by the East and North Africa.
Right.
Like they didn't come up with it in a vacuum.
Totally. So okay, we must
Hercules.
The time to act will be at hand. Unleash the Titans, your monstrous band. The goal for this episode, as I said, is to figure out why Disney's Hercules is the greatest film of all time. But I also want to talk, because this is a queer history podcast, about how gay it is. Like, I feel free to dispute anything that I put forward here, but I did a ridiculously close queer reading of this film in preparation for this episode. And there's a lot that is just straight up queer coded or camp. And it's not limited to the typical like Disney move of making the villain gay or stuff like that. Like, it's not that. Sorry.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into that. And then at the very end, we will have our special newfangled straight sistery segment, because representation matters, which you will only be able to access if you are a Patreon subscriber. So hit that link, baby. Go to patreon.com/historicalhomos, sign up, subscribe, and join us in our our condemnation, rather, of the straight people who have landed us in the future that we live in. Are you ready?
I am. I'm so ready.
You're ready. Here we go, baby. Act 1. The origins of Hercules. Honey, how did we get to Hercules? I think the first thing we need to establish is who was the real Hercules. And we don't need to do like the full mythological cycle and all of that. But I do want to just set up in this first act, who was he? What did he mean to the ancients? Like, what did they think of him? And how gay was he, of course? So tell us a little bit about the origins of Heracles, which is his original Greek name.
I would love to. And I think all of this started because I'm sure I've said this many times into a microphone, and I think you were the recipient of the most recent, which is that I maintain that Disney's Hercules is one of the most mythologically accurate pieces of modern reception about Greek mythology, period. Like, in terms of movies, I should say, and TV, like on screen, because they actually get a lot pretty right. So Heracles is the son of Zeus and this woman named Alcmene. And, you know, I believe in this case, there's so many stories of Zeus impregnating women. It's utterly revolting. But I think in this case, it's not overtly gross, I think. Maybe it's one of those ones where he transformed himself into her husband, though. Those are pretty icky. But her husband is this guy named Amphitryon, which I love because in Disney, Hercules' adoptive parents are Alcmene and Amphitryon.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the myth of it all, he is born to Alcmene. He's also a twin, and his brother is the son of Amphitryon. So it's like one god child and one mortal child. That happens a lot in Greek myth too. Genetics, as they are. And his whole thing is that he's strong right off the bat. He kills these two snakes in his like bassinet kind of thing. They are sent by Hera. Hera is very immediately his big foe in the world. His name actually means glory of Hera, which people think maybe is something to do with. So his early name is Alcides, and then the sort of idea around the transmission of the myth is that he kind of picks up this name of Heracles almost like ironically, because Hera makes it like her entire duty to ruin his life, which of course is very common in Greek myth because the women are very often caricatures of male fear. And that is what Hera very much represents, is this like angry woman because Zeus had a son with somebody else. But what it means is that, obviously she has so many examples like that, but the Heracles one is the most famous. And so that sort of becomes his overarching story, is this sort of Hera hating him. But what's most interesting about Heracles compared to, every other Greek hero is the lasting power and the way that he was a Greek hero for all of Greece. We can safely say he's the one who is this like ubiquitous Greek hero, whereas everyone else tends to be limited to their like regional heroes. Even the big ones, like Perseus is the regional hero of Argos. He's very famous, but he is the regional hero of like that part of the Peloponnese, like Mycenae, Argos area. And, even like Jason, he's sort of broadly, but also not really considered anyone's hero because he's kind of a loser. Theseus is Athens and a loser, all of these things. But Heracles becomes so beloved across Greece that every town has a story of him, down to the fact that there's this one idea where he went off and he slept with these 50 women and impregnated all 50 of them in one night. And then so all of these 50 sons of Heracles were born 9 months later. And, it's one example of like all of these ways where every part of Greece wanted like a hand. They wanted like a piece of Heracles. So they came up with all these stories.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. But like you said, too, he's also the gayest of the heroes by, I would say, 100%. Like none of the other, quote unquote typical heroes really have any homosexual relationships, whereas Heracles has like a comfortable few. I mean, not only does he have a handful of boyfriends, one of which is his cousin. That's less great. But he also like has this whole period of time where he lives with this Eastern queen named Omphale, and they have this like, I forget kind of why he's there. It might be some kind of punishment, but it doesn't really seem like it. He seems to really love it, and his whole thing is like for 10 years he dresses like Omphale and Omphale dresses like Heracles. And so he also like does a kind of whole, like, I think we can best describe it as drag almost, because even there's lots of like art of it, and it's very like drag coded of Heracles, this like big strong hero, everyone's favorite hero. And there's this decade, I think, where he's like wearing this queen's clothes, and this queen who's I think from like probably Turkey area now, and she's wearing his like lion skin cape and holding the club and all these cool things. So
right.
I mean, that's like a very broad idea of Heracles, but the idea is that he is this like, he is the Greek hero. He's the big guy. He does countless things. His most famous are his labors, but there are so many myths. Like, there are probably like 100 Heracles myths for every one of like any other, like even big hero you could name. Like Heracles is really just this all over the place. He did everything. He helped everyone. He also harmed a lot of people, killed his first wife, got killed by his second wife. It's quite a time.
The idea that he is like every Greek's hero is really important, because he's the ur-text. He's like this paragon of masculinity in the ancient world, which I think is actually really important to understand when reading the film, when doing our close reading of the film, because that's not how he is originally presented in the beginning of the film.
He's very underdog.
He's a bumbling, awkward, outcast, which is not really the vibe around Hercules myth. I mean, I'm not sure there's like a huge amount around his like childhood or whatever beyond the killing the snakes. But he's this paragon of masculinity. You also mentioned that he's psychologically quite interesting, which is not something you always get with the Greek myths necessarily. Part of Hera's revenge is getting someone to strike him mad, or someone sends a frenzy, and he goes into on this killing spree where he kills his first wife Megara and all of his children. So he's also like this violent psycho as well, and that's, I think, interesting that the Greeks tied that to their sort of like major masculine guy, and I wonder if there's something we're meant to be reading into that in terms of like overweening, overflowing virility and the dangers therein.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true though. And like in terms of the sort of psychology of him, the nicest part about Heracles as a character overall is that because he was this hero for all of Greece and so many people wanted him in stories, we have so much more than everyone else, whereas most other heroes have like one or two stories, but Heracles has like all of them. And so it does become really interesting, and it is absolutely this look at Greek masculinity. But simultaneously, too, it's like a good place to remind people that our idea of what a hero is or should be is entirely based on like a modern reading of heroism. We don't like in the ancient Greek world, their heroes were not meant to be these like beacons of moral good. They were
right.
The word hero, I mean, the overall idea is that these were more of like a main cultural character. Like that's kind of what made you a hero. Usually it's that you went on a quest, you completed some kind of task, some kind of labor, you did something. But like it wasn't about always helping people, saving people, doing like objective good. And I think that's where we often get sort of thrown by this story. Like you said, he gets Hera. I think she just like sends him a madness. And yeah, he kills his first wife, Megara, and their 2 sons, I believe, 2 or 3. What's interesting too is like that is what seems to be like this obviously like very big moment. Like you'd kind of imagine it as more of like a climax moment of his life, but what that actually serves as is the impetus for his labors, which become like the thing he's known most for. And then like after those labors, he marries another wife who ends up, I mean, famous for lots of other ways, but how he meets her is in Hercules in the form of how he meets Meg, which I also love. Now I'm going to like jump around because I love the accuracy in everything they've done and like the ways they've melded characters together in this movie. But, you know, he's not the bumbling teenager. He's not this like, he's meant to just be doing good. The way Disney plays up on this idea of heroes is incredibly fun for overall Greek mythology. Like, you know, when he meets Philoctetes and it's like, and I've trained all the greats, like a lot of yeses, you know, like that whole scene with Danny DeVito, who is like iconic in every possible way, is so perfect. And also like, it's not very Greek mythology, but like, it's so good.
Yeah. And also the thing about his masculinity is that is part of, I think, what allows him to do the drag thing as well.
Because he's so masculine.
Like, he's so masculine. He can wear a dress, this dude, you know, like, wow, what's next? But I think it's also important to note, like, as you were saying, the difference between a hero and a heros, the ancient Greek word, like, these figures are worshipped, you know, you pour libations to the heroes, you like, or do you leave them little honey cakes? You do something.
I think it would depend on who it is. Probably like each hero cult, I would imagine, have their own. Like Hercules becomes a god, so then he has his own very specific hero cult. But yeah, right.
There's almost an element of ancestor worship going on here of like nobody really knew when they existed, but these heroes were believed to have existed. Like they had a very real connection to them.
Yeah.
Well, very spiritual connection to them, I should say. So, okay, before we start going through the film in more detail, why do you think? I mean, do you think it's just because Heracles is kind of the head honcho that Disney chose him as their only human male Disney princess? If you think about it, all the other male protagonists are not royal. They're not like descended from, except for Simba, but he is a human. He is not human, famously. Even though I am kind of attracted to him in his adult lion form. Not sure what's going on there. But like Tarzan, not really. Aladdin, definitely not. Like Hercules is kind of the Disney princess, but the boy version, which is another reason I think gays are so into him, is because it's like, ooh, we get to go on a big adventure with our, you know, and be little royals who have to find ourselves. But why do you think they chose Hercules? Is it just because he's like the big one?
Okay, well, first, I'm not sure if my mic picked it up or we had a little blip. I have to clarify. But Robin Hood is a great example of another hot animal from Disney, but two, he might actually count as another Disney princess. Have you thought about that?
I don't even know the Robin Hood
You
film.
don't know Robin Hood the Fox? Where did your sexuality awaken if it wasn't from Robin Hood the Fox?
No, I do know this.
Millennial's sexuality awakened with Robin Hood the Fox.
God, you're gonna have to explain more about that because this is not making me horny, this one.
Oh my God. Okay, well, I'm not gonna be alone when people listen to this. It is a long running meme that, like, in any case, that's fine. I mean, I think the nice thing about Heracles, and like probably why they picked him, is that he has this like wealth of mythology to pull from. And this is something that like I think about a lot, because I think a lot about how we have had very terrible on-screen representation of Greek myth broadly. And like, so I compare it, you know, a lot. And I'm going to sort of compare it to Clash of the Titans, because I think it's a good experiment for why Disney's is good and interesting, but also like the only one I can think of that also has like a featured hero. You know, like they use Perseus in Clash of the Titans, but then at the same time they like pick out all of these things that Perseus didn't do and like make him do them, or they pick out all these characters that are not associated with Perseus and they do that instead, you know? Whereas like, and that's what always baffles me about these kind of reception pieces is like there are so many myths that are, as they exist, like so entertaining and would make for incredible on-screen representation. And I think that's why I think Disney's Hercules is the best example, because they rightfully saw that in picking a character like Hercules, you can tell these kinds of stories in a way that keeps it unbelievably accurate to Greek myth while also making it into this like fun, goofy kids movie, right? Because so many of the things he did are able to be kind of like put into this more comedic way, whereas a lot of the other heroes, what they did is a lot more overtly violent, but like in a way that is less kid friendly. Like obviously Hercules is violent to a degree, but in this way that they can make it can't be a kids movie.
It's so episodic, like like you're saying, like there are some, and it's also, I mean, I guess there are monsters in other ones, but like just the preponderance of monsters in this cycle of myths about Hercules is just like, there's just so much to play with.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot to do with like how early of a myth he is too. Like in terms of the broad idea of mythology, Hercules is this character that they conceptualized as being, you know, more ancient than the heroes of the Trojan War. Like he is said to have been the generation before that.
Right.
So, and that's why he's associated with all these good monsters and stuff too, right? Because they're imagining him at this like very early time. At this time when the monsters were all still around, they needed to be, you know, brought to heel. Or there are even, you know, Heracles participated in the war with the giants, according to, you know, the early sources. And that's something that is supposed to have happened like before Zeus had even really taken full control of Olympus. Like he's really there at kind of all of these formative times for mythology. And it means for a lot of good monsters, but also like a lot of material they could pull from and keep it accurate, which is so nice.
Okay, we're going to come back to that because I think one of the things that I love about Disney's Hercules is that it literally has the Titanomachy in it, like at the end. You get to like the big cosmic battle that underpins like so much in Greek mythology. Let's get into the movie now because, and I'm going to play the gay side, and apparently you're going to play the straight cishet side because that's the model that you've signed up for.
No, well, yes, but also like, I mean, you'll see what I mean in a fun way. I'm excited for this juxtaposition we're going to have.
I respect your position.
I don't
and your
respect how straight
practices
I am
and your beliefs.
So it's fine. I wish I wasn't.
Oh no. We didn't think this would happen. We didn't think the time would come when I started doing self-promotional ads for my own goddamn Patreon in the middle of these episodes. But here we are, people. Here we are. If you enjoy what you're listening to, consider subscribing to our Patreon. You do get cool shit. You get some fun stuff, bonus content, as well as the right to vote on future episodes. So please do consider signing up. I want your money. Okay? I'm American. I'll be very plain about it. Enjoy the rest of the episode and check out our Patreon at patreon.com/historicalhomos. All right, back to the episode. Act 2, from zero to hero, just like that. Okay, so let's go bit by bit. This is the greatest Greek mythology film of all time, and I would like to apologize to Ralph Fiennes' nude scene in The Return.
It's not enough.
Which is the movie about the Odyssey of Odysseus coming home to Ithaca. It was an exciting moment, I will say, in Greek mythology film history.
Mm-hmm. I've heard nothing else was particularly worthwhile, though. So.
Oh no, it was garbage.
Yeah.
It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. But this movie, first of all, just has so much heart. This movie just like has that like, you can do it, like big optimism in it. And I think that's actually one of the beats that I want to start with. Like there is the character of Hercules is, I mean, you know, we'll get to the muses, we'll get to all of that. But the character of Hercules is so endearing. And it's almost disarming in a way. Like he's all brawn and heart and no brain, really. And it's kind of like an amazing. I mean, I'm trying to think. Like Pocahontas is not like that. Pocahontas is smart. Mulan is clever. Like the Little Mermaid has her beautiful voice. You know, like there's something so adorably blonde about Hercules that I think is a great place to start this with because he's kind of a Disney princess, but he also subverts some of the conventions, you know, of how those characters are typically position. So I just think that's interesting. And then the other thing that we have to start with that makes this movie overall extremely camp and fucking fabulous, and by the way, is the only really good part of the live production on the West End, right? The Hercules musical, are the muses. The
muses
idea,
are culture forming. Those muses, like they changed the world.
They still are.
Yeah.
They still are changing the world. The idea to take the Greek chorus gospel is, I mean, it's insane. It's insane. And like their mannerisms, the way they interact with the narrator, like everything is just so over the top. And it sets this, it also completely subverts what we were talking about in the beginning of like Greek mythology is for white people who love being white and coming from the West, you know? And it's like, no. That's not our vibe. And I also just want to mention that Howard Ashman, who was Alan Menken wrote all of the music, not the lyrics, but all of the music for Hercules and for all of the films in the Disney Renaissance in the 90s. Howard Ashman was Alan Menken's gay lyrics partner. They wrote like The Little Shop of Horrors together. You know, they did all sorts of stuff. And I like to Howard Ashman is the one who decided that Sebastian the Crab should be Jamaican in The Little Mermaid. So he just had these brilliant little flourishes that like made these movies really kind of Broadway and camp. And I like to think that taking the Greek chorus into a gospel place was very much inspired by that kind of homosexual shenanigan. So the muses are their own thing. I can't tell you how many times in the back of my head I say,
"Honey, you mean Hercules? I'd like to make some sweet music."
Apropos of absolutely nothing. It's just like, that's my Tourette's is, honey, you mean Hercules. But let's bring it to the birth, because this is a big deviation from the myth.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's interesting because I think it sets up a dichotomy between the kind of queer-coded villain and the cishet perfection of the couple of Hercules' parents. So in the movie, he's born to Zeus and Hera. He is obviously the son of Zeus and Alcmene in the myth. But what's interesting about that is that like Zeus is also kind of a dummy dum-dum in the film, and then Hera is kind of his prom queen wife, you know, and they kind of have this like perfect little family, perfect little house that then the very witchy kind of camp villain comes into and wearing a dress and says, you know, I'm going to blow all this up and destroy this perfect nuclear family. What do you make of this?
See, what I think is so straight-washed about this is his parents. Because to me, like, I mean, I'm phrasing it as straight, but to me it's the like, that's the like sheen of good Western people, civilization kind of stuff that makes me go, it's just too bad. I understand why you're not going to be like, okay, this king of the gods is an enormous slut who gets around with everyone. But at the same time, like, I think there could have been a way to not present this idea that he does come from this like loving hetero, like completely, you know, passive almost kind of couple who like are forced to let their son live on Earth. I don't know. That's the part that I understand why, but it's boring. And to me, like, I guess what comes with the like the straight washing in my head is just this like this turning Zeus into loving father and husband that I go, ick. Yeah. Like, and that's, you know, it's, again, it's not, I'm not going to like argue for that the movie is straight because of it. But there are these moments where I'm like, I wish I could see a bit more of the Greek myth in there because I find it so obnoxiously like, yeah, clean cut, like what they're supposed to be. That's not to say I dislike any objective part of this movie, but you know.
No, and it's there for a reason. Obviously, it's like it sets up like perfect heavenly father vibes versus like the devil coming up from literal underworld to screw it all up. But it is interesting that the hatred of Hera, as you said, is the thing that drives the entire myth of Hercules.
Yeah, it doesn't really
Hercules.
Work without it, but they make it.
Yeah, and then it's all it's all kind of moved over to Hades, although he doesn't necessarily hate Hercules because he's the son of Zeus. He just hates him because he's going to get in his way.
Yeah.
But I think the thing and so Hades, the introduction of Hades is, I mean, John Lithgow, like no wait, not John Lithgow.
No, it's James
That's,
Woods.
Shrek. What's it? James Woods.
Bleh, but he does this. The character is perfect, so we can ignore that it's James Woods. Yeah,
it's pitch perfect. Hades is this weird combination of sort of like brash New York sleazeball. Also, the influence of like New York Jewish culture on this movie is amazing. Like, there's so many, like, Hades says oi a lot. Like, it's just fucking hysterical. And we'll talk more about the connection to New York when he goes to Thebes, because that is also, I think, a big part of the story. But Hades is kind of this like sleazy New York-y kind of guy who talks like this and is like, you know, come on. And then he also has very important feminine touches, I think, you know, like he has these sort of like long, spindly fingers. He is, as I said, wearing that black dress. He has the way he produces like the evil potion, you know, and he has all of these sort of like camp. I mean, of course, on a podcast, I'm doing visual movements here. But he has all of these kind of flourishes that make him seem a little bit, you know, is he? And of course, his number one homosexual trait is his skill in charming older women. He's able to sweet talk the fates into revealing his future, without which nothing in the movie would work. Nothing would happen. So anyway, I think that's all hilarious to set in contradistinction to the dumb jock vibe of Zeus, who, like, you know, rages when when he figures out that Hercules has been stolen. And then the kind of very diminished, you know, almost British looking like wife that Hera is portrayed as. You know, she's just like this doting. I think she even has a vaguely British accent.
Yeah, and she kind of talks like she's like on a cloud, which I get. I mean, they're up in Mount Olympus, but she doesn't talk like a human woman.
Yeah. But I was obsessed with the characterization of them as a kid, like, because I went from seeing these illustrations in D'Aulaire's Book of Greek Myths to then seeing it on screen, and I was like, oh my God, they're so real. Like, I can see them. And then now as I rewatch it, I'm sort of like, oh, they're actually like complete basic bitches. And I think maybe there's also something going on here with, like, you almost don't want Hercules to get back to there. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's sort of like, that is the house with the white picket fence, and like, you want him to not fully become a hero, but you don't want him to go back to Olympus. Yeah. Totally. I don't know if you have that vibe also.
No, I do. And I think that leads me to, like, I would say one of my only real complaints with this movie's structure overall is that I think this dichotomy of Hades versus Zeus and Hera, like, in addition to everything you've said, but it also just, it's very like, I think it does really work in terms of the movie, like you're saying, but in terms of the mythology, it's always disappointed me anytime that they make the bad guy Hades and the good guy Zeus. To me, it feels like it's just, unfortunately, screaming Christianity.
Yeah,
it's in the same way that
the devil versus God.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, whereas mythologically, there are no stories of Hades causing any trouble to anyone except for his wife the one time. And so, like, you know, to me, it is a little bit of like, it's a little mean to Hades, because I think overall what I find interesting about Greek mythos is that they weren't inherently like afraid of death and the underworld in this way that we think of with Christianity. Like, the underworld was not hell. It was not meant as a punishment. Like, you know, and those are things that just kind of disappoint me about how they've gone about it, because I think there's more interesting ways. But like you said too, like, it really sets up the story in a very, like, very satisfying kind of way of like where you're kind of going to get to. Though agree, like, not getting back up to Olympus, because Olympus doesn't seem that interesting to me. It's very much everything down on Earth.
I never realized that until just going on my big ramble just now. But it's like, there is something kind of like basic bitch, like, white culture about Olympus. Also versus like the fabulous divas who are like guiding us through the story. You always want to be pulled back to that.
Yeah. Or even the underworld sounds more interesting to me than whatever they have going on at Olympus.
I actually was just in my head. I was like, he ran the underworld, but thought the dead were dull and uncouth. And it's like that. Also, like there's just little things being like, okay, he's like lives on the Upper East Side in Manhattan, and he drinks martinis, and he uses words like uncouth. You know, like. I'm sorry, but he's a homosexual, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first. So we get out of the underworld, and Hercules has been stolen from Mount Olympus, turned into mostly human baby Hercules, and discovered by Alcmene and Amphitryon. And then I think we have another queer moment where he's a fucking reject. He's an outcast, like because of who he is, because of naturally occurring things within him. He cannot fit into society, you know? And like, I rewatch that scene now, and it is like, it's perfectly played the way it's like, you kind of understand what the problem is with someone like this, you know, bringing their entire agora to raising it to the ground. But
by the way, though,
at the
Greek
same time,
architecture would never.
I know. But that's just how strong Hercules is. He can.
But the columns are singular. You can't just knock them all down. In reality, the columns are made of the circular drums because the Greeks knew they had earthquakes.
Sure.
They ain't stupid. Sorry, that actually really stuck with me when I was watching the movie yesterday.
Inaccuracy number 2 that we have logged for today. But yeah, I think it's just like really sweet. It's really bittersweet how you kind of understand that he can't stay there, but it just fucking hurts him so much, you know. And that's what sets him going back home, and his parents telling him like, "Honey, you're different," and it's time for you to set out on your big journey to the city to understand what makes you so different. Although we don't know that he's going to the big city yet. I will. Yeah,
he's got to go find Phil.
He's got to go find Philoctetes. So this is, I would say, this is the Hercules glow up moment, right?
Oh yeah,
where
he's got a full montage.
Oh, a song, a montage. So we meet Philoctetes. He's like chasing. He's very much like dirty little satyr chasing the nymphs, you know, and kind of unapologetically presented that way. And then, actually, I have a question. Is this a myth that...
Thank you for asking. Phil is one of a few of my favorite ways that this movie plays with real mythos. The first is, I realize we almost went over them, so just real quick, I have to say that the Fates are amazing because
of course,
they are this brilliant conflation of the Moirai, the actual Fates in Greek myth, and the Grei, who... serve very little purpose except to help Perseus find Medusa, unfortunately. But who share one eye and one tooth between them.
Yes.
And that is the most delightfully unhinged thing in myth. And so the fact that Disney was like, okay, we got to combine these characters fills me with so much joy every time because it's spot on to make them just wacky in the best way. But Phil is another really...
Do you know what? Wait, sorry. Just one quick thing on the Fates, because you're so right. I'm such a bastard for skipping over them. But one thing I just realized that's interesting about them also is that they're kind of scary, like in the movie, but they're not evil necessarily. And that very much reflects, I think, what you were saying, even just about like Hades before, of like, they weren't like... I mean, the Grei were more monstrous, maybe, but like... They're not necessarily like villains, the Fates, you know, like and they're just a part of nature. The Grei
actually are not described in any way monstrous. The monstrosity is like later misogyny, because the word actually just means the gray ones. They're basically just older women. And like the monstrosity of sharing an eye and a tooth, I will give them that. But in the only other way they're described, other than being the gray ones, is like swans. Sometimes they're kind of swans, which is super weird. But yeah, like they're
I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. They're wacky ladies. I love them. But they are this great example in the same way that the Fates are, where it's like, they're powerful and they like kind of wield this sort of power in that very specific way. But at the same time, like they're not meant to be. Nobody really is good or bad in Greek myth. Everybody is just doing things and there are results, you know, like in this really interesting way. Like it's just sort of Because the purpose was not
and
about...
let's see what happens.
Yeah, because the purpose is to see what happens. The purpose wasn't to like tell some story about good versus evil. The purpose was to like, you know, expand their cultural identity and memory and all of these things. But yeah, no, the Grey Eye and the Moire, the way they're squished together into those characters has been my favorite for all
Brilliant.
time. I think, and since the moment I learned who the Grey Eye were, my brain went, "Oh my God, Disney's Hercules, squished them together with the Fates." I'm obsessed, because they're a delight. But Phil, to get back to that, is another great example of this, of the conflation of two different characters in order to make this like very, very appealing on-screen character. So Phil is a combination of the actual character Philoctetes and Chiron the centaur.
Oh my God, of course.
Yeah. So they make him into a satyr because I think they were like, this is objectively funnier. And I part of me does wonder whether they like which came first, the satyr or the Danny DeVito. Because like he wouldn't play a centaur. He's a satyr.
They're like,
you know?
we can't get Danny to be a centaur.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And but also like literally no one else could play that role except for Danny DeVito. Iconic. But so what they did is, they made him a satyr, but otherwise he is this conflation of characters. So one of Hercules' like very good friends. There's a whole mythos that doesn't make Hercules look all that good, but is Philoctetes. So he's very famous as being a very like important named friend of Heracles. So that's where they're getting the name from. But then, the implication is that he is Chiron, the trainer. So sort of the whole storyline about him training all of these heroes is coming from Chiron, but the Philoctetes is coming from Heracles specifically. Not least because I don't...
That's such an unlock. Wow. I totally did not clock that.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
I should know that.
I mean, but that's the fun of all of these, is the way that you can kind of like piece stuff together as you go, you know? Or the more you watch it, the more like these things that'll unlock. But he's a favorite for that because, I mean, they found what a fun storyline for this trainer of heroes, right? Like he is known for being, he definitely trained Achilles, and he's associated with like all of these other heroes, and he's known for being this kind of trainer. So then, to like pull in Philoctetes so that you can call him Phil and make him a satyr. Like it's a very well done in this way that you can tell they did their research, but also they're making a good movie.
You just set off so many things for me. I realized we also went right over the scene where Hercules meets Zeus in the temple, which is just interesting from a historical standpoint because like that statue of seated Zeus was like a very famous one in the ancient world of Zeus at Olympia.
Yeah.
Right. And then also just the like religious side of the Greeks thought that the gods were in those statues, like that's why they made them to manifest them.
The temple is a god's home. And so people were even, I think there's a lot of restrictions about regular people couldn't really go in either because it was a god's home. Like the priests were the one.
That.
I've heard something recently, but again, there's so many things I've learned over the years and they come from so many different sources and people, can or cannot confirm that type of stuff. But I have a feeling that people weren't really allowed in.
It would make sense.
Yeah, like the priests were allowed in, but it was absolutely considered like the god's home. So being able to have him interact in that way. I actually just realized that's where, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, one of the reasons I got into what I do now / just got a classics degree is I wrote a novel featuring a Greek myth, but I was like 20 and it was garbage. But I had like a whole scene, I think, where basically that happens. And now I'm like, I think you pulled that straight out of Disney, where somebody goes into a temple and talks to a statue. And I'm like, son of a bitch, I didn't come up with that.
Frankly, neither did Disney's Hercules.
No.
I mean, it's I actually wrote my dissertation about Greek tragedies where there's a god on stage and there's a statue of the same god.
Cool.
And there are a couple of scenes where that happens in Greek tragedy. But anyway, that's an interesting thing that like is actually kind of from Greek religion in a way. And also that's when we get Pegasus, who is completely from the Perseus myth.
No.
Is he?
No, just pulled a Clash of the Titans.
Oh my God. Who is it? It's Bellerophon?
Or?
Yeah. Oh my God. Flame me.
It's okay. You and every other person who's ever interacted with the Pegasus myth thinks it's Perseus. So
That's so true. That is directly lifted from that motherfucking movie that I think I watched like 9 times in various classes at school. I don't know why that was always one of the movies that they like
The
trot
original
out
one,
on.
then I imagine.
Yeah. On the like the big boxy TV that comes out on the rolling tray, and you knew that Clash of the Titans was coming on. Okay, memo to me, maim myself later.
Yeah.
Memo to me, maim you after my meetings.
Pegasus, single flying horse. His name is Pegasus. It's not a breed. And Bellerophon was the only hero who actually rode him in a myth.
That's why we have you.
Yeah, this is a
That's why we have you, Liv.
running thing for me. We're talking the entire 8 years of my podcast have I been telling people these facts over and over. So
This is a hill that you've been dying on for 8 years.
I will always.
I also would like to note that satyrs were meant to be funny in Greek culture a lot of the time, right? Like they in Greek tragedy, after you watch the sad plays, you have a satyr play where a bunch of big dicks
I was going to say, the thing
prance around. Yeah. It's
they
horny
had
as hell. So
enormous hard dicks. That's the big difference. Satyrs were meant to be funny, but they also were always sporting oversized erections, literally always.
And it's one of the things that's why I hold them close to my heart.
Yeah.
But I think that's funny because Phil is kind of portrayed in that like hubba hubba.
He's playing the satyr role pretty well, just everything except the enlarged
we don't
phallus.
Not in this version.
Dicks
of the
on
film.
sticks, as I would call them for generally worship in the ancient Greek world. Just a lot of dicks on sticks.
Yes. And then the last thing that I also realized, tell me what you think about this, but like the way he meets Phil and has to like bring him out of retirement, kind of reminiscent of trying to get Odysseus to come on the Trojan War, right? Like that's a little bit of a harking back to that movie.
Not to blow you up, but you're not wrong. Except what it's really harkening back to is the time that Odysseus actually goes to the island of Lemnos. Yes, Lemnos, to bring Philoctetes back to save the day at the end of the Trojan War after Achilles dies. Yeah, Odysseus and Neoptolemus go and they bring back Philoctetes to save the day.
He's been left there. They left him
there.
Well,
Hercules left him there because he got bit by a snake.
Oh my God, the layers.
Yeah, his best pal Hercules left him there because Philoctetes got bit by a snake and Herc was sure he was going to die. And then flash forward like 40 years, somehow Odysseus and Neoptolemus are like, well, we're losing the war. We've got to go get Philoctetes. I hear he's been on that island forever. And then he just is there. And he didn't die.
Okay, so it's much more that because it's literally they have to convince him to come save the day.
Yeah, and it's literally him.
Okay,
yeah. Like you're right, but also like there's a more direct connection.
No, there's a more direct. No. Okay, love that. Okay, so once we have trained up Hercules, then we can begin, right? And so first of all, I love that they go to the big city. Getting to Thebes is how Hercules is going to make a name for himself. And I'm sorry, but this is just pure camp to me. This is like the ingenue. Hercules is the ingenue. Like any young actress from the Midwest going to New York City to make her way on Broadway. Like Hercules is effectively doing that entire thing.
This is so true. I love that so much. Sorry, I had not made those connections and I am obsessed.
I had not made it until I started thinking about this episode. But it is exactly that. And it's so brilliant because not only do they get New York into the film, but then afterwards, after Zero to Hero, when he becomes a hero, then they start to spoof celebrity culture and Hollywood and all that stuff. And it's so clever. But before we get to all of that, we have to go to the inciting incident, which is where he fights the river god, right?
Yes.
And now this is going to be, this is all you because this is pure mythology. There's some interesting deviations when you think about like who the real Megara was, all that. But tell us about the river god, what happens there and its relation to the actual myth.
Thank you. I'm so glad you asked. I mean, I absolutely love this scene because again, it's this moment where we are realizing that they are smushing together these characters in order to, like, honestly tell even more of, like, the Greek myth via, the few characters they've chosen to have. Because what they've done here is directly conflate Heracles' first 2 wives. Like I was vaguely talking about earlier. His first wife is Megara, like you said. He kills her. Awkward. His second wife is a woman named Deianira. And he meets Deianira by saving her when she is being abducted by a centaur named Nessos. And I mean, in Hercules, this centaur is named Nessos. Like Meg says it very openly, which I love. And so it's very much this guy. And this is another, I mean, I think maybe this is another reason why they made Phil a satyr too, so that they could have this like big bad centaur. Because one of the confusing things about Greek myth is that like 99% of centaurs are big and violent and scary and dangerous. And then 1% being Chiron is like a good, helpful guy who's like also a healer. It doesn't make any sense. And that's just Greek myth. But though actually this might be my right time and the right show to remind people the other difference between Chiron and the other centaurs is that visually on a lot of pieces of pottery, he is depicted as a full man with the back half of a horse, which does imply that he has both a human man dick and a horse dick. And I do have a friend who has coined the word double dong Chiron.
And personally, that is what I'm looking for in a partner.
Just think, that's canon. You got to have options.
Chiron.
You got to have options. But yeah, so I think that they want to show this centaur of like a more true centaur of Greek myth, which is that they are scary and they're abducting women and they're doing all this stuff. Right. And so, yeah, Heracles stumbles on Meg being abducted by this character, which is so true to Deianira. What I love is that Meg is like, I don't need you, fuck off, which is so delightfully 90s in this way that like, I think we've lost some of that level of like mouthy woman and we need it back.
Yes. Agree.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't need his help, but they met anyway, and that's adorable. But the story with Nessos and Deianira is great because, right, okay, so this goes back because when Heracles first kills the Hydra, which is also comes up in the movie, but after, he dips arrows in the Hydra's blood, which is like super duper poisonous. And he then later in life uses those arrows and like shoots one at Nessus. And that's what kills Nessus the centaur and how he rescues Deianira. But as Nessus is dying, he gives Deianira his
some of his blood or something.
He gives her his like clothing or something that has this now poisoned blood from the Hydra that then carries this poison around. And then Deianira, later in life, Heracles is fucking her over. He's like threatening to bring another woman home against that woman's will. He'd just been off with Omphale, where he's been wearing her clothes for a while. And Deianira's really over him. And honestly, I don't think she's wrong. And the hard part, though, is that she doesn't know that the shirt, the fabric, whatever she has from Nessos is poisoned. She is told by Nessos as he's dying that it's like more like I forget what the implication is, or I forget how it's said, but the implication is that it's like a love potion. So Deianira thinks that by giving this to Heracles or putting it on him, whatever happens, a lot of this is coming from a play that I haven't read in a while. And so she gives that to him thinking that it'll like bring him back to her because he's been so terrible and out and about and with all these other women. And instead it kills him. And then that's how Heracles ends up dying. And so it's like he dies through all of these ways. The machinations are such that ultimately is entirely his fault via like from the Hydra down to Nessus to Deianira to all of this, right? But what's exciting for this movie is that they managed to get this scene in that not only has to do with Heracles' second wife, but also leads to his death. And they've made it into this like magnificently campy moment with this like big, scary, gruff centaur who's like a nasty, terrible guy, and Meg helps herself. It's a great way of like linking together all of this like very deep level mythological references into this like easy to understand packaged children's movie.
It's so true. I've never thought about how, like, because Deianira, like that, the myth of Deianira and Hercules is not kind of the famous one, really. That, like, most people know, like, the 12 labors, like, that is probably way more preserved in the Western canon, I guess. But you're right. It's like his end is kind of in his beginning in this movie. And also, like, if you think about it, by the end of the movie, Meg will be dead and Hercules will have to go save her from the underworld, also kind of killing himself in the process. So like Meg being his downfall kind of thing, but also savior is interesting, given the overtones of the Deianira thing.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. But I also think, like, my theory has always been, in large part, that they wanted to use mostly the story of Deianira, but the name Meg is way better for a 90s audience than Deianira. And so, yeah, like it's
Princess Di.
It's a hard word too. Like, there's so many letters in that name. Whereas Megara is like Meg, so I think that's like really something in there, is that they also are kind of bringing in this further storyline of Deianira, even though they're not using her name, but they are still kind of continuing on with that from the myth itself, which is even more interesting.
Totally. Now let's pause for a second and talk about Meg, because if Hercules is the kind of I don't want to say inverted Disney princess, but like that's kind of like, like all muscle, no brain, a boy instead of a girl. Like Meg is kind of the anti-love interest. Like she's not into him at first, like she doesn't need him. And on reflection, when I took my extremely queer eye to this film, I realized that she also comes across kind of as like Hades' fag hag. Like she's sharp-tongued. Yes. She's sharp-tongued. She's down on her luck. She's bad at boyfriends. And Hades owns her and kind of is like, the big male relationship in her life, and that she has to stay loyal to instead of allowing herself to, fall for the hunky Hercules. The way that her character comes across also is very New York, like,
I was going to say that too. Yes, so much.
When she's like,
he comes on with his big innocent farm boy routine, but I can see through that in a Peloponnesian minute.
That is, it's so Will and Grace banter, like that. I just fucking love it. And I hadn't really thought about how much she is presented in that way. Because of course, as I will argue later, I do not really think that Meg and Hercules are really in a straight relationship. They have the least believable romance in all of the Disney films. It happens way too easily, and it is, and you just don't buy it. Like
I think they're gay best friends. They
are gay best friends. I really think that. I really think
Meg is also very queer coded.
That doesn't detract. That doesn't detract from their love at all.
Yeah, they're just. I don't think they're regularly fucking. That's what I think.
No. There's no P and V happening. No. So yes, this is also like what sets off kind of the labors, aka we only really get the Hydra from.
We get a lot others in like little references here and there.
We get yeah. So let's talk about Thebes as New York really quickly.
The Big Olive itself. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
Like, it's so funny when the guy opens up his cloak and says, "You want to buy a sundial?" Like, it's so Times Square coded. It's so funny. And there's so many little things, so many little jokes throughout that whole sequence that I'm obsessed with. But yeah, my biggest insight here was really the ingenue thing that I already talked about. It's how it's all set up, is like you have to go make it big. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Like there's all these little snippets that make it feel exactly like that story. And then we get to the Hydra, which is, I don't know, it feels kind of accurate the way that it's in terms of like the details, right, of the monster. What's your take on the Hydra?
It's so funny you say that, because I was watching it last night and I realized that I spaced out during the way he actually kills it, and I was like, "Ooh, was that accurate? Should I rewind and go check?" I don't remember. So I don't remember if he does but he does kind of like burn the necks so they can't grow more, I assume. Do you know? That's what he does in the myth. Like basically,
he smashes the mountain and it falls on the Hydra after he cuts off too many heads.
So no, but the many heads is accurate, yeah. Which that like every time you cut one off, two grow from it. Which is what makes the Hydra a real thrill. And I mean, I would say the Hydra's fun just because I think the Hydra is one of the most. I think the Hydra is one of the most likable monsters, and by that I mean, like, for me personally, I like that the Hydra is one of the only ones that isn't like sexualized or feminized in this pointlessly yucky way. And so I like the Hydra because it's just a monster. It doesn't have any
pure play.
Yeah, there's no like, I don't know, there's some weird thing about a dude wanting to fuck a woman and he can't or something, so she's a monster. This is just like, nah, the Hydra's messy. But what's interesting is in the myth, this is one of this is like a highlight of one of his potential love stories, is that the only way he can kill the Hydra in the myth is that he has help from his cousin / like
his cousin boyfriend.
Yeah, his cousin boyfriend's Iolaus. I don't know how to pronounce it. I can spell
Iolaus.
Iolaus, yeah. And so like that's the way that Hercules can actually do away with it. They like work as a team. So yeah, you know, I think that's a little. I like that he has help in those ways, but at the same time, I think one of the reasons why he has to do more labors than 12 is because then Eurystheus, who's like the one in the myth telling him to do the labors, is like, you had help, so that one doesn't count. So maybe it's good he doesn't have help in the movie, but I mean, it doesn't have the same purpose. But I have to say,
that's interesting.
Yeah, because it's like, he's like, oh, you didn't do it alone because you couldn't.
You
have
had your
done it
boyfriend
yourself.
helping you.
Yeah, exactly. Your cousin boyfriend. But I have to say the Thebes thing for me, I mean, I do love the way it's so clearly representing like New York, but also I think it's just where I'm at now and kind of how I take in like reception of this type of stuff. But I was so thrilled to be reminded how much they emphasize that it's Thebes. And that to me, like that was so they're paying attention to the myth and not the culture. And I love that. Like if they were just wanting to make like a quintessential like Greek myth, like, you know, it would have been in Athens or Sparta. And I don't think Athens is even mentioned. I know there's like a joke where a guy in Thebes is like, I'm going to move to Sparta because he's like over
That's it. I'm moving to Sparta.
But yeah, so I just really love, I mean, the Hydra geographically takes place nowhere near Thebes, but Heracles is from Thebes in terms of like his overarching mythos. And so it's nice. It's really just nice to see Thebes get some representation, honestly, because it's my favorite town. Well, I've not been there. It's the
big mythological city in a lot of ways, in like, you know, in the sense that, I mean, stuff happens elsewhere, but it's like a lot happens in Thebes, you know, like there's a lot centered in Thebes. So that's very true. I hadn't clocked that of like New York. What would the equivalent be? It's not like Athens or Sparta, which is what everyone knows, but in mythological terms, it would be Thebes. Mm-hmm. That's where everything happens.
Yeah. Well, and in large part because so many of the sources we have are Greek plays where the Athenians are kind of shitting on Thebes. Right. So it's often like, is it Thebes or is it like Athenian propaganda? But in this case, I mean, it doesn't matter here. It's like you're still picking up on the city that does feature like all of the best myths, Heracles included.
Yeah. So, okay, he kills the Hydra. It drives Hades nuts. And Meg is sort of like, well, now I'm watching you. Now I'm into you. You got something. And it's interesting that the whole musical sequence of Zero to Hero is kind of like, to me, the transference of all the diva power of the muses onto Hercules. So now he is a diva.
That's so
in
true.
His own. He's a diva in his own right. You know, he's rich. He has a house he has like a palatial house in the Hollywood Hills. He's living a superficial life. He's getting his portrait painted. There's an amazing reference to the Nemean lion,
and it's Scar,
which is then Scar from The Lion King. All of these little like delicious Easter eggs in this movie too.
There are so many.
But it's really, to me, it's really like spoofing superficial Hollywood celebrity culture. You know, we start in New York, then we go to LA. It's the classic pipeline. And to me, it's all encapsulated in the moment where he then goes back to talk to Zeus. And Daddy Zeus says, it ain't good enough. Try harder. You're not a real hero yet. And he just holds up his thing. He's like,
Father, I'm the most famous person in all of Greece. I'm an action figure.
You know, merch is like the ultimate sign of success.
Yeah. Air Hercs.
Yeah, the air Hercs and the Hercade or something. I can't remember what it's called, but he has a drink too. So that setting that up that is really interesting, and it drives the story forward because then Herc is kind of like, what's the point of all of this? Like, I'm totally lost. Re-enter gay best friend Meg, who is secretly there to discover his weakness, but she takes him and plays hooky, and then they're suddenly in love. We don't see anything that happens. No. There's no characterization of it. They're just sort of sitting down in a garden, and then they're in love.
That garden is full of so many Easter eggs. I mean, the love doesn't make much sense, but like every statue in there is like a beautifully drawn. They're not all ancient. There's at least one point where there's like a Cupid and Psyche, the Antonio Canova sculpture, and stuff like that. But I mean, as a person who started as an art history nerd and turned into this, like watching that, I'm so obsessed with like every little reference. There's so many. I mean, that
the Venus de Milo.
They chop off
and
her
then
eggs.
He skips
eggs?
her arms,
her eggs. I'm doing well. Also,
leave her eggs alone.
We call her Aphrodite of Milos in this house.
Aphrodite of Milos, of course.
I like to be a little bitch about it. But yeah, no, there's so many of those moments. And like, there's so many little just in the montage, I'm trying to think of examples, but I just remember like clocking. There's so many little references. The visuals generally, like the patterns they use in the background of like every time the muses are on, all of the different like pottery motifs, like everything is so spot on in this way that, again, like, I'm infuriated to say this, but I don't think is matched in like any other reception where you get this many like tiny details that are pulled straight out of ancient art or ancient sources or all of these things. It's so nerdy.
It is. It's so careful. I just realized also when they enter into the garden, they're talking about going to see like a play, and they're like, that Oedipus guy? Man, I thought I had problems. Like there's all these just like dumb little references to like different layers of ancient culture
and
coming
Thebes. Though
yes,
Oedipus is like a few generations removed from Hercules and technically related, so it doesn't really work on a like mytho-chronological standpoint, but every other way it's great.
And you will be sending a letter.
I always
to that effect.
Always.
I already have. Now, I think the next thing that's important in terms of my big gay reading is that, interestingly, Meg is really resisting falling in love, right? That's the song. She needs the song to get her.
She won't say
there.
She's in love.
No chance, no way. I won't say it. And in a way, like, Hercules also can't see that love is the answer to his dilemma, in the sense that is what's going to actually make him a hero, is true love and sacrifice, right? And actually kind of superseding the self and going beyond just being in it for himself, which is a lesson all gay people have to learn, that it's not just about yourself. I still haven't learned that yet. But I think I just like that they kind of mirror each other in their unwillingness. I mean, Hercules is willingly in love, but he doesn't understand the full implication of it in a way. He's kind of naive about love. And then we have the word that I had to look up because I'm a terrible ex-classicist, but we have the big reveal. And the big reveal in ancient Greek tragedy, anagnoresis.
Oh, you got me.
Which is when it's like, it's the moment where you like realize what's what or something, like, or the truth is revealed. And so Hercules obviously does this deal where he gives away his strength to save Meg, or to free Meg, for no harm to come to her, rather. So he sacrifices his strength, but then realizes that Meg is kind of a lying bitch who's fucked him over. So they're having a best friend fight. And then we get the full Titans v Olympus, the famous court case. And I love this part of the movie. Like, the whole thing just sort of like devolves into chaos. And it's kind of amazing because that was like the big threat, I guess, in kind of like the Greek understanding of cosmic order, is like, thank God we have Zeus, because he came and he made everything normal again, because everything was just fucking fucked up before.
Back when the earth was
and then they
new.
show it. They show that like real fear, you know, of that being unleashed again, the Titans being unleashed. I guess it's not giants that are. There's a Cyclops. We don't really have giants.
Well, I mean,
coming
yes
in.
and no. I would say that actually this is another case where they've done a brilliant job of conflating two different things in Greek myth in order to serve what they want, which is
Okay,
that
tell us.
I think that this is like, it is a real smushing together of the Titanomachy with the Gigantomachy. Because visually, I think, I would say they more resemble kind of what the giants were more conceptualized as. Like the Titanomachy, I mean, one, we don't really have any visual ideas of anything, and we don't, like, there's, the Titanomachy in mythos is a lot more, like, opaque. We don't, it's sort of just, like, a thing that happened, whereas the Gigantomachy is this, like, direct, you know, war between the gods and the giants, who are, in this case, much more like earth giants. Like, the Gigantomachy, the giants are, like, sprung from Gaia. So they visually kind of fit with what they do in this movie. But most importantly is that Hercules fights in the Gigantomachy. So I think that like what they're trying to convey is more the Titans, because I think that's easier to explain to kids. But visually and in terms of like the storyline, I think they're also working with the Gigantomachy, which was much more of like an on-earth battle where people could say this happened here and Hercules helped and, you know, the gods defeated these giants. The Titanomachy is really just this amorphous, like the time that, you know, the Olympians took power from Kronos, but it's more to do with like Zeus defeating Kronos than anything else. Whereas the Gigantomachy,
it's the first victory. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the Gigantomachy is much more of like, well, one, it happens after Zeus has already taken power from the Titans. And there's this moment where really in terms of text sources, it's mostly lost. So it's more visuals, but what we know is that the giants are meant to be these creatures sprung from Gaia to fight the Olympians. So it really fits with that kind of mentality.
That's so interesting. And actually, I mean, another reason that this is one of my favorite parts of the movie is because you get all of the gods like fighting as well, and then you see more of their insignia. Like, it was my favorite game as a kid, was trying to guess who was who, because they're not all immediately obvious.
I love Poseidon. He's got his little fin.
Poseidon is lit. I also love Dionysus. I think he has like a giant big red nose and the grapes, and he's really short too and like tubby. Frankly, he's exactly my type. And then so you get all of the different gods like fighting in their chariots and shit like that, but then they lose pretty quickly. They have to have Hercules fighting. But basically by the end of the movie, like, Meg dies. The only way that Hercules gets his strength back, becomes immortal, achieves his true, you know, self-actualization, is by sacrificing himself, is by getting over himself, essentially.
Putting on that poison shirt. Setting yourself on fire.
Well, and then that's not even the full end, right? Because the real end is when Meg returns the favor almost and says, you have to go back and be with your people. And I understand that. And I'm willing to give you up too. But then it's the surprise end is that Hercules would rather be mortal on Earth with the woman he loves, the gay best friend, the fag hag he loves, than stay with his family on Olympus, right? So he kind of literally goes for his chosen family in the end. And I think there is something about that, or about like going back home and realizing that this isn't your home anymore, you know? That is also super queer coded in a way, in terms of like queer people having to like go out into the world and like discover themselves and then kind of make their own thing after being, you know, essentially born into cis-het families that are not bad by any means, but are not the end of the story. They're not going to go replicate those necessarily.
Yeah.
I think that is also a queer moment. The fact that he accepts the new version of himself rather than, you know, going back to white picket fence Olympus. Whew, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Disney's Hercules, the greatest film ever written.
It truly is. It's just such a joy. It's such a joy.
Now we need to turn to our final segment, Straight Sistery. Now, this is when I like to invite my guests to essentially rant about a straight person or idea or institution in history or mythology in this case, who is in some way responsible for landing us in the mess that we now find ourselves in. So, Liv, do you have someone to share with us today, a straight demon?
Gosh,
Sorry,
there are
person.
so many. Gosh. My people are terrible. No, I don't even want to call them my people anymore. I'm queer in some way. It's fine. I don't like men anyway.
You're queer by association. Sweetie.
Thank you. That's the thing I've also decided I can claim with the
You
volume
come on this
of-
podcast, you're queer.
Thank you.
It is contagious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In any case, I mean, I think my fascination is overall straight history because I think, but to me, that can be drilled pretty deeply to like Christianity. And when it came in to fuck shit up, but I think it fucked shit up for so many of us. And by that, I mean queer people, women, everyone who isn't a typical man. And in this way that I think I can kind of see it in things like Disney's Hercules, but also every way that I consume mythology, except when it's just like me figuring shit out on my own. Which is just that like we as a culture have put so much straightness onto the ancient world that it has like lost what it could have been if not for Christianity, or like what we could understand about the ancient world's relationship with gender and sexuality and all of these things. I don't think we'll ever be able to fully conceptualize what that was like because of the 2,000 years of Christianity that has come in between, completely destroyed our ability to like actually understand what it was really like back then. And so I think just generally my rant is about the Christocentric nature of the West.
Take that, motherfuckers.
It's everyone.
No,
the problem is everyone.
I agree. And like, it's interesting that the way you put it, that we can't unsee it. You know, like we can't
can't take it
unsee
back.
through it.
Yeah.
We can't take Christianity back. I feel that it's interesting to think about it in figures like Hercules, actually. So my straight figure, like Hercules is not only the big hero in the ancient world, like the myth of Hercules has been repeated so many times in film and television, and it's always as this kind of like hulking brute, you know?
Hyper masculine, super
he,
straight.
Yeah, but he's actually like a bit more than that, I think, in the ancient mythological cycle. So he gets kind of dumbed down because of this super like masculine stereotypical depiction. You know, it's kind of what I think leads to him being the all brawn, no brains type in the Disney film. And so really quickly for my rant about straight history, I just wanted to introduce into the fold Arnold Schwarzenegger, who you may not know played Hercules in the little known but extremely terrible 1969 film Hercules in New York.
That's one where I know that title exists, but I have no frame of reference, thankfully.
Sweetie, it is the worst film that has ever. It's not even a film. It's just like a montage of scenes where clearly someone was sitting behind the camera being like, I can't work with this guy. I cannot fucking work with him. He was fresh off of winning Mr. Universe or whatever the fuck the thing is, the bodybuilding competition was. And the reason that I bring that up also is because Arnold Schwarzenegger is, of course, an evil straight person from history, who, by the way, was on steroids the entire time. He is not. That body's not.
I mean,
you know.
Yeah, I hope that's not news, but I guess.
No, but you know what I mean. It's like he's kind of billed as like the OG like bodybuilder who invented modern bodybuilding. It's like, shut the fuck up, you cheater! You were doing. So anyway, that bothers me, and I just needed to mention that. But this film is.
Sorry, real quick. I just want to say how quickly Schwarzenegger would lose in a Pancration competition. There are no rules. He would fail. So like, just, you know, for him being this like OG bodybuilder, like send him back to ancient Greece, get him in front of a scrawny looking guy, but who's good at Pancration, and he's fucked.
And tell the listeners about what Pancration is, because
it's like,
that is
the whole thing is the only rule is no biting or like eye gouging. Like it's a hand-to-hand combat
WWE.
wrestling style. Yeah, but it's like way more hardcore. So it's more
Yeah.
like, I think if like UFC was like naked and oiled up and
I'm listening.
yeah, no, but yeah, like literally it was two dudes wrestling naked, covered in olive oil, and the only rule was no eye gouging.
Wow. So that's made me both horny and hungry.
You would have loved the Ancient Olympics. So much naked, so much oil.
So much oil, babe. Oh my
They
God.
did tie up, though. You want to hear a quick, really gross fun fact about the Ancient Olympics and games?
Yes, please.
So they had to perform naked. That was the whole thing, right? They did all of their athletics naked because the Greeks were incredibly straight, as we both know. But they still had the problem of like swinging business. You're naked, you're
Sure.
wrestling, you're running. What are all these things?
Technical term.
Yeah, absolutely. The things swinging, and they thought, well, that's uncomfortable. So, but we still have to be naked because we can't be like putting on clothes. That's wacky. So instead, they developed, I forget what it's called, but my friend described it to me in the most delightful of ways. They had like a little string where they would kind of tie up their penis in some such way with a little bow so that it couldn't fly around, but that they could still be naked, oiled up wrestling.
Right.
Because again, these
Kind
were
of-
incredibly straight people.
Kind of like a reverse tuck.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
just,
you don't
tied it up,
you
nice
don't
little
shove
bow.
the balls up there. You sort of gather up all the business and then tie it in a little bow and
Yeah.
tie it to your waist or something.
Yeah, and then you wrestle another guy in front of all of your friends and all of the men of like all of Greece.
With your flattened dick and your like Ken doll genital space. Wow. Thank
The ancient
you
world's
for that
fun.
image.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that image.
This is what happens
I'm
when you have
even
friends who specialize in ancient spectacle. The stuff they can tell you sticks in there for
in
life.
scrotal dick tying.
Yeah.
Somehow I am even hungrier now. So that says a lot about me. Okay, well, whether it's Arnold Schwarzenegger or just Christianity or Zeus or whoever it may be, I need all of the straight listeners to start reckoning with your ancestral past, with all of these people who have ruined the world in one way or another. Until that day, we thank you all for listening. Thank you, Liv, so much. This was such a fun and breezy, beautiful conversation to have, and I'm so glad we finally did it. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled that we got to go the distance together. It was a real
Yes.
delight. I will, though, say, I
Should-
meant to say it earlier, but one of my favorite lines is when Meg calls the centaur a pinhead with hooves. And I did write that into an episode title when I covered Dianera.
I mean, the number of lines,
Oh,
it's just so good.
quippy.
I was going to do the opening. I was going to open this episode trying to imitate the Fates doing, in 18 years precisely, the planets will align ever so nicely. And then I just did it there. So
I
I
love
hope
it.
everyone listened for that. Remember that Hercules is one of the gayest movies ever made, one of the best written films.
The most
in
accurate Greek
history.
mythological representation on screen.
The most accurate, the most inventive also
Oh.
representation of Greek mythology on screen. You heard it here first. Liv, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for listening. Love you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
That's all for this week. Thank you so much for listening. If it's your first time listening to a Historical Homos episode, welcome. You are officially one of our little historical hormones. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star only, of course, review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps the podcast so much. We have also recently launched a Patreon. So if you want to check out how you can support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/historicalhomos and check out all of our fun tiers. You get access to bonus content. You get the right to vote on future episode topics. If you would like to merely keep abreast and a testicle of all things Historical Homos, you can follow us on Instagram at historical.homos or sign up for our weekly email on our website at www.historicalhomos.com. Love you. Bye.
Wasn't that fun? Ugh, it's so great to just get to host these kinds of conversations and these kinds of collaborations and being able to speak about just the wonderful ways that myth and Greek history is represented in our modern day and how it is adapted. It is so fun. I know Liv had so much fun doing this conversation, and we love the historical homos so much. So we're really happy to get back and have another conversation and talk with them about all the queerness that is so rampant in antiquity. And yeah, so let me just do the end credits for y'all, because that's why I'm here. I'm here to give you intro and outro. All right, so let's talk about Myths Baby is written and produced by the one and only Liv Albert, away, vacationing, relaxing, enjoying, I don't know, sun? Who knows? Michaela Pangarish is the Hermes to all your Olympians, the producer, and I don't know, I do other things like stress out about school and work deadlines. Don't worry about it. Anyways, also, deadline next week, Tuesday, wink wink, see you there. Select music by Luke Chaos. Thank you, Luke. The podcast is part of the Memory Collective Podcast Network, a collection of creators that all strive to bring you accurate and reliable information on the ancient world and, you know, all that shit. These include the wonderful friends at Movies We Dig, the partial historian Sweet Bitter, and so much more. Get ad-free episodes and so much more by subscribing to the Oracle Edition on Patreon, patreon.com/mythsbaby, or via the link in the episode's description. Would love to see you all there. I love sharing what my current books I'm reading, or, you know, the wonders of the Vancouver Public Central Branch Library that is for some reason shaped like the Colosseum. I don't know. I could not still find a reason for that. Anyways, I'll see you all next week. We'll talk about something very fun and historical on Tuesday, November 11th. Bye.